Can Gemini CLI migrate a working app to Firebase when I've never used Firebase before? I've got a simple app. I just need to add auth and Cloud Sync. Gemini CLI recently released extensions, basically MCP servers with custom instructions for specific tools. I wanted to see if the Firebase extension could walk me through the setup, handle the migration, and give me a helping hand when inevitably something breaks along the way. Let's go take a look. So the idea is pretty simple. It's literally an app to keep track of apps I want to build in the future. These might be apps for myself. They might be apps that are good at demonstrating a particular tool or something on a video. So the idea is I just want to be able to jot down a quick idea, maybe keep some notes about it, and maybe even drag them into a folder to kind of organize it. So I built this with Antigravity. I've used both Claude Code and Codex in the past. I vastly prefer Claude Code because it's so user-friendly. Walks you through the steps you need, definitely walks me through things that I don't understand, and there's a lot I don't understand. I'm not a UX developer, so generally I am relying on the tool completely. But when Antigravity came out, I did have to use it, and I fell in love with it. It is so user-friendly and added so many features that I just really, really liked it. And so I wanted to see if Gemini CLI had gotten the same upgrades and was more user-friendly and usable now to beginner or intermediate coders, and see if it could migrate this app over to Firebase. All right, so I installed the Firebase extension into Gemini. Now, I am on a paid account. Since the release of Gemini 3, it seems like they're offering half off of paid subscriptions for a couple of months. In my early experiments with Antigravity, it did seem like the usage of Gemini Pro ran out pretty quickly. So I thought for $10 a month, I definitely want to try out both Gemini 3, but also Nana Banana. You get a lot for your money. $10 a month for a couple months, definitely worth it. So the first thing that I did when I came in was created a branch off of main. I just figured if I'm now adding Firebase into the mix, I do want a stable app that I can always go back to. The next thing I did is I asked Gemini, hey, I'm thinking about using Firebase for this project. Basically, I need to add authorization and Cloud Sync capabilities for this app. Is that a good idea? Is there a better idea? Because I'm coming in blind. I've never used Firebase before. I had a couple conversations with ChatGPT about what it was and when it might be useful, and it did seem like a good candidate, but really, I wasn't sure, and also I was curious what Gemini thought about it. I was thrilled to see Gemini come back with such a conversational answer. Firebase is an excellent choice for your requirements. I would recommend it, and here's why. Gave me a couple of very specific reasons why it would fit my needs. It gave me the alternatives, including Supabase, that I could use, told me we could start getting it up and running right away. But I stopped it right there and said, well, I've got this Firebase extension in the Gemini CLI tool. Do you know what that is and how it works? And it right away came back with, yes, I'm aware of Firebase extension. We can use it. Again, this felt very conversational, very friendly, like a coworker, much like Claude Code does. Unlike Codex, which if you ask it a question about using Firebase, it will just take off and start coding. This tool actually answered my question and said, would you like me to use it? Rather than just take everything I said as an immediate imperative to go do. So I was really happy to see that. So once I gave it the go-ahead, it was off and running. The very first thing it said was, looks like you're not logged into Firebase CLI yet. There's no active project linked to this. I need you to do that. And here's the steps that you need to take. This, again, super appreciated because since I don't understand Firebase, I don't understand all the pieces of the resources I need to allocate, project IDs I need to create, or permissions that I need to give. So I really was hoping that Gemini would hold my hand through this process, and it did. Every step of the way, it said, here's what I need you to do. If I had any questions or clarifications, there were a couple things that seemed like they should work, but for whatever reason, they just didn't. In the end, Gemini figured out either exactly where I needed to go or gave me workarounds of, looks like I can't help you with this. I need you to go do it manually. Here's exactly where you go and what you need to do. This, to me, is on par with Claude Code, just in that level of comfort and ease of use for somebody coming in fresh. So once all the permissions were in place, the real work began. It started digging into the code. It very clearly spelled out exactly what it was going to do with step-by-step pieces of information. Now, I don't necessarily understand all of this, or even maybe any of it, but it is comforting to know that it's got a plan and it's following it, laying it out step by step. As it was making the changes, one of the things I did notice in passing was the drag and drop logic will need to be adjusted to update Firestore. So I knew it was going to be modifying the behavior of the code. I don't understand why. I assume it has to do with the way that things are being stored and managed by Firebase. Obviously, I don't know what it's doing, but I figure it's fine. It definitely does know what it's doing. It did quite a bit of work. At every step of the way, it said, okay, that step is done, moving on to the next step. And it felt like it was talking to me. This is a big one. I need to replace the entire function and its associated helper. It really, every step of the way, felt like it was really keeping me informed of not just what was going on, but sort of the impact of the changes. It wasn't just saying, like a mechanical robot, here's the thing that I'm changing next. It gave me the flavor and the context of the changes. I don't remember seeing even in Claude Code before. So I did quite like that, I have to say. So once that was all complete, it gave me a couple of final things to make sure that I had permissions allowed and security things to handle in Firestore, that it either needed my input or that I had to go do manually. And then it was done. So I tested it. And it did. There was a little bit of a problem in the notes section. I couldn't use the space bar. So basically I couldn't use words separated by spaces. So I gave it a little note. I can't use the space bar. I've attached a screenshot to show you what I mean. It went and thought about it for a bit and fixed that. But that was just the beginning of the trouble. At this point, I was trying to test the drag and drop functionality, the moving in and out of folders, and it was completely broken. I could no longer drag anything into a folder or rearrange it. So Gemini went to work on that problem. Here's what I did. You should now be able to test it. Nope, still can't reorder anything. Can't drag in, I can't drag out. Basically, nothing's working. Several back and forths later, it was still broken. So finally I said, it's still broken. Can you use Playwright to test it? And then basically it sort of went into a loop state. It kept trying to make changes, and then it would open up a browser, which basically was just a Playwright test result page that said a couple of tests had failed. The app still didn't work correctly. So I would explain to it, nope, that still didn't work. And it would open up the browser again and ask me to look at the browser. There wasn't any action I could take, but it kept waiting for me to do something with that test report. So at this point, I was pretty sure it was looping, but not entirely sure what to tell it to do differently. But then eventually I came back to the screen and noticed it looked like it was just flashing at me, but it was really, really stuck in a loop. So clearly this was not good. So I escaped out of that loop and asked it to continue trying to fix the code, but it kept coming up with this kind of an error. It would just hit this error and stop working. Resource exhausted, please try again later. Well, at this point I was exhausted and I definitely wanted to try again later, but I wasn't sure what this meant. I thought at first maybe I had hit the limit of token usage on the Pro plan, and because it even said it's going to switch to the 2.5 flash model for the rest of the session, but it didn't look like it was doing that. So eventually I think I asked ChatGPT, I did check the documentation, and it was saying that it was making so many requests to the server, it was getting shut out basically. And so it got a stop what you're doing, you need to chill out for a little bit. And this happened multiple times in a row, but still it kept hitting this error message. I would ask it to continue, it would do a little bit more work, and then this message would pop up again. So at this point, I told it to quit using Playwright. I was not entirely sure that that was the cause of the problem, but I do know that causes rapid loops of requests and testing, so I figured it didn't seem to be helping. I may as well just take that out of the equation. That was the first thing that started working. And since I had asked it to stop using Playwright, it started adding some console debug information so that I could test manually and tell Gemini what I was seeing on my end. So it would make a change, I would test it, take a screenshot, send it back, give it my findings. And that led to the next big finding. At a certain point, Gemini came back to me and said, I understand you've sent another screenshot. As I can't directly view images, could you please describe what the screenshot shows? So all this time I had been sending screenshots, it could not interpret them. Now, this was surprising to me because Claude Code and Codex have both been using images for quite a while now. And yes, I understand in the world of AI, quite a while might mean like 2 months now, but I'm not used to a tool that cannot take a screenshot. So I did a little bit of research. It does look like if I install the Nano Banana Gemini CLI extension, it will be able to not only create images, but also view images and interpret them. But for now, Gemini CLI is blind. Now, I didn't want to exit out, install the extension, and come back in because I would lose all of the context. Maybe that would have been a better idea. I'm not sure. But so far, I have not been able to figure out a way to resume conversations. So if somebody knows how to do that in Gemini CLI, let me know in the comments because I could have used that in this instance. That was a key piece of information that I was missing that also helped start to fix the problem. But I still kept getting those resource exhausted error messages. So clearly it was in some sort of loop state where it just was making so many requests and trying to work so hard, it actually couldn't get anything done. Gemini CLI does not, that I know of, have an explicit planning mode. Like in Claude Code, you can go into planning explicitly by hitting the /plan command. In Codex, you have to go into read-only mode, and they are calling that their planning mode, but at least it gives you that opportunity. I couldn't find anything like that in Gemini CLI. I decided to just basically ask it if it could create that for me. So I flat out said, I need you to go into planning mode. You seem to be constantly running into quota limitations, so I need you to make a plan, follow it step by step, and just slow down a little bit. Can you do that? And it definitely could. It gave me another step-by-step plan. We'll take this piece by piece. Instead of trying to fix everything all at once, let's just take it step by step. That did seem to do the trick. Slowly, piece by piece, I did get it working. I tried to focus it on one problem at a time. First, I can't drag ideas into a folder. Now I can't drag ideas out of a folder. And in the end, that seemed to do the trick. I will say, right before what felt like the very end, I did hit that hard token limit. It said that I was out of tokens for all pro models, and it would be dropping down to 2.5. That was fine because, first of all, I didn't have any other choice. And second of all, it was really 95% of the way there. I said, just go ahead and do it. Use whatever model I have access to. Let's just make that change. And that did seem to fix everything. This was multiple hours of, as far as we can tell, just coding and looping and hammering the servers with requests. So it did seem like it was a more than adequate allotment of tokens in the end. I also will say I was about 20 minutes away from the reset window, so I felt like worst case scenario, I didn't have that long to wait until my pro plan usage got reset. So I was really happy to see that. But it did take most of 5 hours to get me to this state, which is, in the end, a mostly working app. I can drag things into a folder. I believe I can drag things out of the folder. It's got a little bit of jumpiness that I don't love, but in the end, I do have a working app that is good enough for me to use. I can check this in at this point, and then if I want to refine it a little bit, I definitely can do that. But the functionality that I was looking for is there. You can see I'm logged in now. It's got OAuth, so I'm calling that a win. So in the end, here's what was really good about Gemini CLI. It was very conversational, very, very conversational. It felt like working with a coworker who was here to help me and give me answers to my questions, hold my hand when I needed it, and generally give me step-by-step updates of what it was doing and the scope and the feel of the work that it was doing. And it even recovered from the sort of loop stuck failure mode that it was in. With just a little bit of prompting and guidance, it was able to get out of that state. In the end, I do have a working app, and that's not always the case. So I was really impressed with that. The things that didn't work so well, I was surprised that it couldn't see images. I kind of assumed at this point that was sort of the standard, but I guess not. Now, they are releasing updates probably hourly, honestly, so I wouldn't be surprised if this didn't pop up or is already there by the time you're watching this video. It does seem like there's a workaround if I install Nano Banana extension, which I will definitely be doing. If that fixes the problem, then I'll be definitely happy with that. It did get stuck in quite a few execution loops. It got stuck in something that I'm not sure if that was code related or because it was coding and then trying to use Playwright. But that resource exhaustion thing, that was not specific to Playwright. I did keep seeing that before I had told it to use Playwright and after I had told it to stop using Playwright. So I'm not sure what that was about, but that was definitely problematic because it would just cause it to error out and it would completely stop. I had to come back in and ask it to continue or keep doing what you were doing. But of course, at that point, I don't know if I was then asking it to continue doing the thing that had gotten it kicked out in the first place. That part, the visibility was a little bit poor in. So that was definitely a problem. And then the fact that it just kind of broke the app during the migration, I mean, that wasn't great. But I will say that was one of the things that Antigravity really failed at when I was trying to build the app. That took quite a bit of back and forth to get that working correctly. And I'm not a UX developer at all, so maybe that's just really hard. Maybe that's just one of those things that fails a lot. That I'm not sure about. And of course, it's worth saying that the original app I built in Antigravity using Gemini 3. And this was also Gemini 3. So whatever drag and drop difficulties, maybe it's not just hard, maybe it's just this model. That I just really don't know. But in the end, I have a working app, I have Google authorization, and I have Cloud Sync. I can't argue with that. And I've now used Firebase just a little bit. It's not that big, scary unknown to me anymore. I feel a little bit more confident, so going forward, I'm sure I will definitely be using it again in the future. That is a win for sure. One of the other things that would be interesting to do in the future is to try this exact same thing, but using Claude Code. So I might do that just for comparison's sake. If you're interested in seeing that video, leave a comment below. Definitely hit the subscribe button and you'll be notified when that one hits. And so for today, I've got an app that I can actually use. I learned a little bit about Firebase, and I learned where Gemini CLI's strengths are and maybe some of its weaknesses. I'll have to play with it a little bit more going forward, but I can definitely see where some of the rough edges are, but I can also see where it really shines. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.